this computer. Okay, hi everybody. Today is Tuesday, November 7th. This is the SIG Testing weekly meeting. I am your host, Aaron Kirkenberger. This meeting is being publicly recorded and will be posted to YouTube shortly. On today's agenda, as usual, I haven't had time to actually go through and scrape through the last week's worth of PRs that have been merged to test infra, though I know we've made some substantive progress. If anyone has anything they want to sort of brag about or bring up today. I wanted to just chat real briefly about any ideas or suggestions folks had for the KubeCon SIG testing update and deep dive. I'm totally happy just making it up, but figured if there are strong opinions on what content you would like to see there, I can work on doing that now. I have until Friday to submit abstracts, and I'm trying to clarify whether or not I have until November 20th to submit slides like other speakers do. Matt Liggett sent something out about using Bazel as the path forward for pre-submits, but I don't see him here. And then there's something by Seth Jennings, who also isn't here, but maybe Steve, you can talk about that, about the need for release blocking Note E tests. Have I left anything out, or is there anything people would like on the agenda? Oh, sweet, you are here, Seth. Okay, so just rambling about basically at KubeCon. First off, who here is going to be at KubeCon? Straw poll. I know I will be, but cool. All right, couple hands. I'm curious if the folks who are at BazelConf right now will be at KubeCon or not. We can check in with them later. But I think Steve had a suggestion of, could we use the SIG testing update to describe how we use the platform to deliver the service? And I think that's, roughly speaking, the feedback I have gotten from other folks is when I give a big brain dumpy type of update at the Kubernetes community meeting about like the latest and greatest part of our stack, I happen to also jump through how different parts of that stack are interconnected and related, and that usually seems to be like the promo video for this quarter's stack as produced by this team. So I could try and stuff within 30 minutes a summary of what our stack is, like what all the components are, what they all do, how many of these you can use today with calls to action, and how to use all of them. Because I think like thanks to the hard work that's been put in by OpenShift and Istio, we can definitely talk about how to use Proud on any repo, any org. And hopefully by the conference we can talk about the use of Tide as well, and maybe not even mention Munch GitHub, or just mention it as a historical quirk. I think we can mention how if you're like a project that's in the Kubernetes ecosystem, you can also use Kubernetes. As opposed to running your own instance of Kubernetes, you might be able to share hours. And then as always, I like making sure that folks know that they can run their own CI however they damn well please. If they put their results in a well-known location in a Google bucket, that can be linked into Test Grid and all of the rest of our infrastructure. But I mean, that's sort of the gist of what I was thinking for the update. The other option is I focus a lot more heavily on roughly here's where we were at last year and here's where we're at today, and like look at all the awesome progress that's been made. But that might be a lot to stuff into 30 minutes. I mean, it's a fun rah-rah thing, but I honestly don't know what kind of audience I'm going to be getting at the update. So there's that. And then I was thinking, basically, call to action is come on down to the deep dive session if you care about really actively collaborating on this. We can hash out our 2018 roadmap. We can have design discussions. We can have hacking on problems, like whatever. I made sure we have a projector, and so like if people wanted to give lightning talks, they can, but I haven't really put much thought into it just yet. Any strong opinions or suggestions on or input on that stuff? Yay, sounds good.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, it would help to know like who the audience is and what they care about hearing. And then that's why in the doc I posted, like, could we frame the effort here as a dog fooding effort, because that might be more relatable and like clearly understandable by people that have nothing to do with testing.
Can you flesh that out a little bit?
Right. I mean, like, there's like so much going on right now with Prow and deploying it. Like, I know for us, if we ran everything that we ran in Prow in one monolithic application on a VM, we wouldn't have to necessarily be worrying about, okay, but how are we correlating logs between things? Are we exposing metrics? How are we detecting failure causes? Like, all of these things that come with the cluster topology that we've created by dogfooding, like this, distributed approach using Kubernetes in that way. That might be an interesting thing to talk about for people at KubeCon, sort of regardless of what exactly the software is doing. And it's just made cooler by the fact that what the software is doing is running the tests for the repo. And so, like, approaching people that have no idea how testing works or aren't necessarily interested in what is Bootstrap in a scenario, like approaching it from the fact of, like, we have a distributed system, we're tackling problems that occur for everybody using Kubernetes as a platform. That might be a way to engage people.
Okay, I like that. So, I mean, if I can summarize, I feel like you're describing, what if we told the story of the challenges that this team has faced rather than talk about the awesome products that we've created as a result. I mean, you can sort of, hey, we made this thing to overcome this particular challenge, but I like the idea of telling that story. My hesitance would be, I really, like, frankly, I haven't been the one doing all the development. Y'all have been. So I would be looking to solicit input on, like, what do you remember as the pain points or the real, like, gnarly problems that you had to tackle. But I do think that sounds like a compelling presentation rather than talking about a product or a service. I'm a big fan of telling a story for sure.
I would reiterate that approach, I think, would be more effective. If I think about, how to connect with an audience, you have to speak to something that interests them, and whether or not everybody in this group is super interested in the the nitty-gritty about how CI works and how the integration with GitHub works and all the tooling around that. The reality is people just want it to work and fit into the background. But if we can tie it to what they do care about, which is running a cluster, writing a distributed application, what are the challenges of doing that in the context of Kubernetes, I think that would have more resonance, or is likely to have more resonance.
Okay. So writing a good test for a distributed system. Yeah, we're not here to tell you how to write a good test, though. We're here to run your tests, right?
But that does bring up it's a big tangent, but just to raise the fact that this is SIG testing. We're really SIG infra. We don't actually do a lot on the, we do the layer below the testing. And arguably, there's a gap in the Kubernetes community in general around testing. There isn't a group of people who are, they're defining what best practice is and helping the rest of the SIGs actually improve their testing story. It's kind of just diffuse. And arguably, it would be good if we did have a focused effort on improving that story.
Some of the people here are a part of that, right? Like some of the people that attend here, like Jeff helped write a good chunk of the framework, and other people over time also helped work on that. I've been scattershot in the beginning and scattershot recently, and people on my previous team used to help quite a bit on this work too as well. Jay did a lot of work in the test infra, and so did Rob. So.
I mean, I think that's a compelling discussion to have in, I think, the deeper dive session, is to try and get some folks together to kind of accumulate, well, how do we hash out what those best practices are? That's something that I personally don't feel like I necessarily have the time for, and I would love to see an owner to sort of drive that forward, right? Like, I'm kind of trying to drive forward to make sure that we're doing a better job of communicating what the hell is happening, because there's so many moving pieces. And so that's sort of, I agree with you that it's like, it is definitely sort of a SIG infra that we're just trying to make sure that we keep the tests, we keep the spice flowing, we keep the code flowing, we keep the tests running. And so as a result, we have some opinions of like tests that are really kind of annoying to deal with, but I'm not sure we have the strictest opinions or like mandate to go enforce good test hygiene. And I would love to see that added to the scope of this group. But if I look at the folks who are here or regularly attend, that's not something I see the group collectively having the bandwidth for.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's just like, to me, the quality of an overarching effort like Kubernetes is, it's kind of a separate concern from enabling the tooling that enables that quality to be implemented. That's all. And they're both critical, and to be honest, I'm very interested in both parts. So I'm not trying to minimize the importance of what's going on here. I'm just, SIG testing to me is a little bit of a misnomer at this point.
I completely agree. Like, I had hopes and dreams of it encompassing all that. I'm trying to figure out how we can accumulate enough interest and resources to tackle like all the things that seem like the right things to tackle. And it's been prioritizing towards, well, let's just make sure we build it, and then they will come. But okay.
Sorry, tangent. I mean, that's a topic that would be useful at Summit maybe.
This is absolutely like the kind of discussion I wanted to have. So I think I kind of want to try to balance like how much time I have. I will try and put together just a rough summary of abstract or something and post it in the channel tomorrow or the mailing list or something. And it's like I can definitely, if I had to just make it up on my own, I could definitely tell the story of why we wrote Prow and why we have evolved and why Prow has evolved in the direction that it has. It's the proliferation of the bot commands, how that makes for a more user-friendly bot community and has enabled the growth and velocity of Kubernetes as a whole. I can speak less to the specific design challenges that we tackled, and that's where I could use help. But I think I could get away with, at least for the purposes of the abstract, just waving it to like, here are some of the challenges we faced on our journey to better testing. And those challenges can be, process-based, cultural-based, or design challenges that we're technically encountering. And I can solicit feedback from this group as we ramp up to KubeCon. The big question mark for me, which I'm trying to have answered, is whether or not I have to have slides in by November 20th, or I can just do it right up till the day of, because that would be my preference. Okay. Does anybody here want to talk on behalf of the idea of using Bazel as the path forward for pre-submits? All right, then I'm going to hand over to Seth to talk about the need for release blocking node E2E tests.
Okay. Yeah, so this is my first SIG testing meeting. Hello, everyone. So I come into this with not a whole lot of background, but I do know that we are looking to get an upstream test, release blocking, not running on every PR, but at least running, I'm not sure what the test cadence is for the tests that don't run every PR but run every release, but probably looking to get something in the grid for that on EL-based distributions, which run a slightly different version of Docker. And we actually hit one of those little wrinkles at the very end of the 1.8 release. And in that issue that I opened, there's a link to another issue that was critical and blocked the release for a day. So we would like to catch that earlier. That way that doesn't happen again. And so this is, in a way, this test is fixing a bug, a gap that we didn't notice in the previous release. And I guess what I'm really looking for is either documentation or someone pointing me in the direction, because test for me is like, wow, there's lots of stuff here. I don't even know where to begin to start coming up with a test that can run upstream for this.
Would it need to be something where you need a full cluster, or could you do an integration test on an EL distribution?
I mean, we're really just looking to do the EDE node tests, so it wouldn't
And that's
need.
basically an integration test at the node level, I think, isn't it?
It's a partial integration. So they don't only stand up pieces of the cluster and they fake out the rest. But there's no reason you can't add a node end-to-end test. And if you're running it on every PR, you can either defaultly set it, but you're going to need someone on SIG Node to stamp it for you. Otherwise, you can feature flag it and it won't be run on every PR, but then you'll have to figure out how it gets enabled for some other interval.
I mean, arguably, you'd want to run it on a periodic basis because it's not that you need to know it. You don't need to block merges. You don't need to detect it before the code merges. You need to detect it before the release is cut. And arguably, a periodic job is the easiest way to do that with the least impact.
Periodic or post-image job is what you need. Periodic is probably the right approach.
So,
all right.
This is half the battle, finding out what these things are called. Periodic job. All right.
So let me kind of come from the top down. I think maybe I can give you some more like keywords or buzzwords to search for. So you're begging the question of what defines what a release blocking test is, and I'm really trying to work to answer that question with a document that Jason Mars drafted, and I still haven't got to actually reviewing it. If I don't soon, I'm just going to ask this group to please sign off on it. But basically, they're roughly speaking, I can say that I want a release blocking job to be, I want it to be something that can pass pretty consistently. Generally, tribally speaking, the release team really likes to sit on a single commit and watch all of the release blocking jobs run 3 times and see them pass 3 times. So we have good confidence that it's not flaky and it's generally pretty stable. Things that prevent us from reaching that happy future are jobs that are really flaky and can't pass consistently, or jobs that take a really long time to run. So instead of having to wait a couple of hours, we have to wait a whole day or longer. So the idea is, if you look at the release master blocking dashboard on Test Grid right now, there are some jobs that are continually failing, which are not really, shouldn't be on there if they're failing. The idea is we want every job that's on that board to be green, and if it is not green, speaking with my CI signal lead hat on as the member of the release team, I want somebody that I can go nag to ask them, why isn't the job fixed yet? Why isn't the job fixed yet? That becomes the response time that I expect out of that individual or SIG reduces as we get closer and closer to release, because I really want to make sure everything that's on that board is treated with the respect that it deserves. So having said all of that, I think that I noticed there's a job on the SIG release master blocking board called Kubernetes, which I think might be the Node E2E tests on some variant of GCE. I'm not sure, but basically, as far as what would it take to get the Node E2E tests running and putting their results someplace, SIG Node would probably be a good group to collaborate with or ask hey, how are you doing there? If you just start asking around about the Node E2E tests, you might get that. And then it sounds like what you want is to run the Node E2E tests on a different operating system.
Right. So I'm looking at the release 1.8 blocking dashboard under SIG Node. I see SIG Node cost image. And so that would be, I'm not sure exactly what that does, but it seems like it's an image-specific EDE node run. And that's kind of what I'm looking for, is a EDE node run that runs on a specific image.
Yeah. So Cole or Tim, feel free to jump in and correct me, but I feel like SIG Node would be the people to ask about, how do I run a node job? They're all kind of focused on container operating system or Ubuntu. I'm not sure if you would need to do something.
Yeah, I mean, I attend SIG Node, and I've run the Node EDE tests on RHEL and CentOS myself. So, I mean, I've run through it. It's just a matter of getting an official version of that run somewhere.
Okay, because like if I back way up, you could use, as far as I'm concerned, you could use your own Jenkins and run your own stuff and get, just as long as you can collect the logs and the JUnit XML files and all that and stuff them in a Google Cloud bucket somewhere, we can like get our config file set up to pay attention to that bucket and then get that to display on test grid and like get that linked into Kubernetes and all that stuff. So like you would be the one responsible for running those tests on your infrastructure with your operating system of choice, but you put the results in a place that we collectively can look at. And I think what we, the community, would want would at least be logs to help troubleshoot if we're trying to understand like why is this failing.
Seth, are you hoping to run these on extended RHEL releases? Is that the goal?
Yeah, I mean, probably start out with CentOS just to avoid having to use subscription manager and protected repositories and stuff like that, just to lower the barrier to entry on the first pass.
Yeah, well, I guess that was kind of what I was focusing on too. I don't know, Aaron, if you can speak to like how that would work. Like I know AWS has given some funding to the CNCF for testing on there. I don't know if spinning up RHEL VMs in that cloud would be appropriate, or if we wanted to do RHEL testing, would we be asking Red Hat to provide subscriptions? Like, that seems like a higher level question.
I feel like that would most likely be preferable.
Yeah.
It starts to get a little tricky, which is why I'm just trying to say, like, theoretically, if you could somehow generate those results, we're totally happy. The project, just speaking on behalf of the project, totally happy to like consume those results.
Yeah. So we've sharded. McCullis landed Jenkins operator sharding, so we should be able to stand up a Jenkins master on our end and give the Kubernetes prow like access to that to trigger stuff. So Seth, let's figure out if we have funding to run those on our end, and then we can plug it through.
But I like super really appreciate you bringing this up, because I was on the release team. I remember like having that last second lurch when we found that bug, and it was kind of a big oopsie doopsie.
Yes, I didn't realize. I mean, I actually opened that bug like 20 days before the release went out. I just didn't realize. I thought it was me. I was waiting for someone to tell me I was being dumb. I'm like, surely someone else is running this.
Like we all kind of collectively facepalmed. I'm like, how did we miss this? Because this is a pretty big deal. So I'm like, whatever we as a community can do to be supportive to make sure we elevate that signal for sure. And yeah, I think like Steve's suggestion, if Steve and Cole are cool with it, I like the idea of if Prow can chart off which Jenkins it talks to spin up which job, that means it's hooked in pretty closely to the rest of our testing infrastructure.
Okay.
It gives you the ability to run it your way with your configuration and stuff.
All right. Well, I'll talk, Steve, I'll probably follow up with you since you seem to know your way around on this stuff, and we'll try to get that wired up so that doesn't happen again. And yeah, I just wanted to let SIG Testing know that I was embarking on this journey. Thanks.
Greatly appreciated. All right. Anything else, Maru?
I have a quick question about like the idea of testing federation. I've kind of heard those words bandied about, but I don't actually know what it implies. Like if I wanted to run tests in response to things that happen on a given kube repo, could I do it independently, and whether I publish the results or not? Basically have my own signal for things that I care about.
That's what I do. I don't publish any of the data. I just do for my targets I care about. And I have my own infrastructure set up to do all of it in. So
is there any formal effort around testing federation? I mean, if you want to test on AWS or some other platform that isn't directly supported by a current infrastructure, can someone run those tests and go ahead? Sorry.
There is, but you have to post back to that's what he's kind of referring to earlier, is that you have to post back in a well-defined location, a well-defined format for it to be consumable, and then it can be part of the test grid output. It's a question of whether or not anyone's even looking at that though. So like now you're part of the test grid, but that doesn't mean anything unless people who are in the know are actually tracking and executing against it. So
You can configure email alerts so that if a job goes bad, it's tracked.
Okay. So there is sort of a requirement for a certain amount of integration, so there's sufficient information about a failure. It's not just like, hey, I failed. And I'm just thinking, like, I can imagine there's going to be more scenarios in the future where people with specific hardware or specific integrations, or maybe they're bundling and doing some sort of distribution, and they want to be able to have some feedback to the community that something's going on, not necessarily blocking feedback, but just, hey, you're doing something that happens to affect me, and if you care.
Yeah, well, so, you know, like we started 4 failed starts on the team. If you're in Derek's team now, Seth, and still are, that team before when it was Andy's team, we started like, and even before that, my team had like 4 misfires along the way by trying to get this infrastructure in place. So I believe Ari and Paul Morey had the last incantation of where it lived for trying to get this started, so that way it was able to post the information. So he was the last person to have it, and I don't know where it is anymore.
So what you're telling me is I should look at the bones? Is that what you?
Yeah, there's a lot of dead bodies laying around. It's like Voltron with dead cats everywhere. Right?
One of the efforts, Mara, that's we're working on right now, if you did want to buy into, okay, I need to support being able to do like a batch merge before my test, or after my testing is done, I need to figure out where to push this stuff so that it makes sense to test grid in Kubernetes. Right now, to do that, you have to buy into like a couple different pieces on like in the Bootstrap and the scenarios and stuff around it. So we're trying to break that out and make it a little bit easier to layer on top of a container like standalone, but it's not quite there yet. So I think today, if you wanted to do that, you would need to probably look at the older efforts.
Okay, thank you.
And yeah, just to speak on test grid for a real quick minute, like I'm trying to figure out the best way to get better about telling people they can use it, or suggesting good ways to use it. So we have the capability right now for test grid to email an email address or a group of email addresses if either a test fails n times in a row, or the test doesn't have any results posted to it within n hours, days, whatever. So we have the technology. It's kind of like, how would you suggest people use it? You know, you could have each SIG sets up a mailing list such that when a test fails on their SIG dashboard, they get notified. Or I could start setting it up, now that I've added owners to all of the jobs on the release master blocking dashboard, I could set it up so it goes and emails those SIGs whenever those tests fail n times in a row. Something to that effect. But I'm still trying to figure out the right way to do it. I've started to document what I as a human am doing for as the CI signal lead am doing. Like, I'm describing how, like, I go to the master dashboard, I see what's failing, I file issues, I ping people with GitHub team and Slack channel notification, and just I'm trying to figure out, like, what's the right thing to get people's attention and let them know that we're actually, like, paying attention. Because generally speaking, automated notifications seem to have in the past created this impression that nobody's actually watching. So, like, we have the technology to make a lot of noise, but I'm trying to figure out where can we most effectively push the notifications so people don't interpret it as noise right away. But I'm, like, really open to suggestions or feedback if we've got ideas on how to do this better, because I really don't like being a human dashboard and notification system, and will not do it for much longer. All right, anyway, I took us 3 minutes over time with that little rant. Sorry about that. Okay, cool. If there's nothing else, I think we can call it a terrific Tuesday. All right. See y'all later.